Hello, good day. This is a short supplementary talk to go with the previously recorded presentation in the Dharma Study Session on the Anapanasati Sutta and a guided meditation I provided. And there are just a couple of things I wanted to bring out that are areas for perhaps emphasis, perhaps additional practice thoughts. So the first one, we're going to and I'm just going to go stepwise through the sutta and bring these out. So the first one is in steps 1 and 2. Step 1 is breathing in long. I know I'm breathing in long, breathing out long. And then step 2 is breathing in short. I know I'm breathing in short. So as we move through the steps, we become more and more relaxed. We become calmer, settle in and concentrate more deeply and settle more into, I guess, non-duality, for want of a better way of looking at it. So there's general reflection is we think that breathing in long is going to be calmer and breathing in short is going to be so it feels like those are kind of the wrong way around, maybe, but here's a way to look at it. So when we start off, the depth of our breathing is greater. When we're first settling onto the cushion, the depth of our breathing is greater, although the frequency of breathing is faster. So exaggerated. And then as we settle in, the breathing becomes so it becomes shallower, but the periodicity becomes slower and therefore longer. So the way to think about long and short is in those terms. So in that way, the way to actually calm ourselves is to have the slower breathing, which is in these terms the shorter breathing. So those can easily be mixed up or confused, and that's, I think, a useful way to look at it. As we start, we will start with long breaths. They'll just be more rapid long breaths. They'll be deeper, which is the length, and they'll just be more rapid. And as they slow down, they become shallower, and therefore in this language shorter but longer. So then we move into step 3, which is exploring the breaths. But if we've actually been paying attention in steps 1 and 2, we've already kind of done that exploration. So I haven't spent time in this guided meditation or in the talk on step 3. From my experience, we've already done that. And then as we move into step 4, which is the calming, we're really exploring in a lot of details. You take that very long approach to calming, we're really exploring in great detail what would be covered in step 3. And that step 4 is really important. A way of looking at what happens when we work with the sutta is it's ever deeper calming, ever deeper and ever deeper settling and calming. So we calm the body, and then in step 8 we calm the feeling tones, and then in step 12 we liberate the mind, which is in a way liberating the mind. So there's this just ongoing calming. So whether practicing Anapanasati or not, this idea of beginning our practice by calming, by settling, is a really important one. So as we move on from there into the second tetrad, we'll start working with feeling tones, starting with piti and sukha, and then feeling tones. It's useful to think of bifurcating our mindfulness. So always keep the breathing in the background. So breathing in long, I become aware of piti. Breathing out, breathing in, I'm aware of piti. Breathing out, piti. Breathing in, sukha. Breathing out, sukha, and so forth. So be aware of the breathing, but be aware of it in background awareness, and put the other object in the foreground, whether it's piti, sukha, or gladdening the mind, or calming the mind, or whatever we're doing. Put that in the foreground and keep breathing in the background, but keep it in our mind as we're working. There's one of our Red Clay members is a retired pilot, and he talks about this in a way that I find really useful. He talks about the pilot and the co-pilot in the plane. And the co-pilot is there with their eyes on the instrument panel and on all the details and the altitude and so forth. So that's the foreground mindfulness, what we've got a really active awareness on. And then the pilot is aware of the energy and attention of the co-pilot on the instruments and the detail, and the pilot is also aware, at a high level of whether we're going in a straight line, whether we're in the right place relative to the clouds, whether there's a storm ahead, whether there's a lot of disturbance, whether we're headed straight at a mountain. So the pilot has kind of that background and that higher level awareness, mindfulness. So we've got these two levels of mindfulness that we're working with as we move into the sutta. When we get into step 5, which is piti, and step 6 is sukha, I always get the ANS and the PNS, or the SNS and the PNS kind of the wrong way around, but it's the sympathetic and the parasympathetic nervous systems. One is the deep calming and the relaxation, and the other is the more energized fight or flight. And I'm not a neurologist, I'm not a psychologist, but it feels to me very much like what we're doing here is we're activating those. And so as we settle down, those become exposed and they just naturally activate. And because we're calm, we get into these feedback loops so they can kind of escalate. But that's kind of what's happening. And there are experiments that have been done where when the flight or fight response is triggered without external stimulus, you've just triggered that. The person in whom that is triggered looks around for cues as to what to do with that, whether to engage in fight or flight, or in this case, with joy and rapture. So that's what we're stimulating. And we have, because there's no external fight or flight stimulus, it's just this energy that we experience, this joy, this rapture. But it subsides. So as we move into step 5, if we've worked with calming the breath, hopefully as you step through that guided meditation with a very, very long period of time working through this calming the body, you've felt some of that energy, some of that piti, some of that sort of rapturous or familiar feeling of energy and excitement within the body as you're working to calm the body. As you become used to that, you become able to kind of bring that on when you're in that settled state intentionally. So when we move into step 5, there's Hakuin, who was a great Rinzai master of the 17th or 18th century. In one place, talked about kind of pouring ghee or butter over the head and feeling it trickle down, and you can trickle down the body, and you can visualize or imagine or close your eyes and just bring this into yourself. Feel that trickling down from the top of the head, and with your breath moving it slowly down, not kind of this kind of pace. So it's not too slow, it's gentle, but it's the one breath take to the shoulders, next breath to the waist, and next breath sort of check in as you're breathing, come down maybe to the top of the legs, and next breath all the way down. But you can intentionally bring that feeling of piti back, and by doing it fairly quickly like that, you can keep its presence all the way down the body. You can bring it in starting at the top and bring it all the way into the body. So you're sitting there as you bring this piti on, and then stay with it up and bring it all the way into the body. So you're sitting there as you bring this piti on, and then stay with it as it settles, and you can feel it wash away and leave behind this stillness and this peace of sukha. And then step 5 and 6. Step 7 is more expressly about feeling tones. And with this one, you can actually move from the sukha and the piti to feeling tones. Notice what's happening at the sense gates. Notice whether there's a noise or a smell or touch anywhere that you can experience in the body. And just notice, go sense by sense, area by area, whether that's pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral. So notice those feeling tones. Don't do anything with them, just notice the feeling tones. So that as we move through into step 8, and we're calming the body condition, the Chitta Shankara, the mind conditioner, we can be working on the sukha and piti. Piti's probably already gone, but we can work on making the sukha more subtle. And we can also be looking at what's going on at the sense gates and these feeling tones, and just letting those valences of pleasant and unpleasant. So And then, so that's step 7 and 8. And as we're going through all of this, there'll be places where whether one's distracted or whether the body just takes this on spontaneously, you're sitting and settled, and suddenly there's this deep breath. Suddenly this is just this deep in-breath. And it's very easy to let that deep breath become a deep out-breath, kind of breath back out of the settled state we're in. But if you notice, you can be very gentle and careful with that exhalation and use that exhalation to actually not just stay in a calm state, but even make that calm state a little more subtle and a little deeper. So notice those, always this is keeping the breath, mindfulness of breath in the background. So you notice that deep breath coming in, and then you're in a position to respond to it and not just let it naturally become a deep out breath or quick out breath, which is energizing, become a very gentle out breath, which is calm. So then we move on, we'll move into step 10, which is, we've gone through 9, and we get to step 10, which is gladdening the mind. Buddhadasa, in the text I've been using, he says one thing one can do when we're gladdening the mind is actually just go all the way back to step 1 and notice how, because as we move through steps 1, 2, 3, and 4, there's a sense of accomplishment, there's a sense of achievement, there's a sense of realizing something positive as we work through the breaths and calm the bodies. So that itself, just that sense of doing this well, of engaging in this practice and feeling it productive, that itself is something that can gladden the mind. So we can actually, then we can go on through 5, 6, 7, 8, and use that as a sense of gladdening the mind. And that opens up this space of pleasure in the mind, of being glad in the mind. All the time remembering to keep breathing in the background awareness. Peripheral awareness, maybe. So then in the guided meditation, it's very obvious that I was regarding it this way. I think it was so obvious in the presentation. But step 13, which is the step on impermanence, that is really a huge step and really taking time. So it's like that's a major transition. We come into step 13, we're moving out of calming everything and including liberating the mind. And now we're going into the place of sort of using that settled and calm and liberated place for insight. And so step 13, going all the way back, steps 1, 2, 3, and seeing the impermanence of breath. And with the impermanence of the breath, that impermanence and our tendency to make something permanent out of that which is not permanent, to try to hold on to this thing, can only create dukkha, And that this dukkha is indicative of there is nothing here to hold on to. There is no self, there can be no self. Moving on to emptiness, tathata, and so forth. So step 13, the really going back and deeply paying attention to impermanence is a really powerful and really important step in this practice. And to an earlier point in the previous presentation, a reason to start at the beginning and work through all of this is having gone through the steps and therefore being in this settled, calm place, so that we are settled and open and calm, and we have actually got a way of taking this examination of emptiness into that really deep, settled, open arena, can make it really deep and powerful. And also having those steps fresh in our mind as we go back and look through them again also gives them a renewed or additional vigor. So really it amplifies also the importance of going through this in sequence. And then the other point that I want to bring out, which is something I did in the guided meditation, but I just jumped into it, is the step 16, which Buddhadasa talks about as tossing back or giving back or releasing, throwing back. From the perspective that we've seen emptiness and deeply seen emptiness, so impermanence all the way through emptiness and tathata and dependent co-arising. And from there, we know none of this is ours. So everything that arises, we give it back because we've always been a thief, taking stuff that isn't ours and claiming it. So there's this letting go and giving back. A way of approaching that is to use this as a step into open awareness or silent illumination practice, which is just in step 15 has cessation. We've seen the cessation of birth, sickness, old age, and death. We've seen the cessation going down the list all the way through the 5 khandhas of clinging. So all of this has ceased. We've let go of all of that. And we're in a place to move into open awareness, which is just being present. Nobody's present. There is just being present with what's arising. So just sitting in stillness and noticing what's arising at the sense gates and trying not to get caught in the stories, not to let it take us off into, oh, that's a bird. What kind of bird is that? It's just the manifestation of Buddha nature. It's just an arising and just being present with this subjective experience of arising, which becomes a unified experience of arising. So moving into this silent illumination can be very powerful. I also want to acknowledge another text that can be useful. Analia has written a couple of texts around the Anapanasati. He's actually written a couple about Satipatthana. He's written one main text about the Anapanasati. And in that text, which I personally don't find anywhere near as useful as Analia's and his other texts about the Anapanasati, but there's something he talks about in there which I do think is really useful. In each of the 4 tetrads, he has a section where he talks about how we can take the elements of that tetrad and bring it into walking meditation. And a lot of this is around using this, always keeping the breathing in the background or the peripheral awareness and having focused awareness in the foreground of what we're working on in that tetrad. So bringing into our walking meditation the various elements of breathing, of body, of feelings, and moving on down the list, and ultimately moving into, we liberate the mind in the 3rd tetrad. So we're basically walking in emptiness. So the idea of being able to bring this into our meditation practice, I also found was quite powerful. So thank you for coming back and joining me for this supplementary presentation. Hope it's useful, and may your practice bring you to complete freedom.